Hey, what's going on, roleplayers? It's the Bard here and welcome back to the corner. And it's now time for part 2 of our Cleric analysis. Today's video covers the Nature, Tempest, Trickery and War domains. So we're starting off with the Nature domain. And it's in one of those positions where it's not a bad domain, it's just no one's really playing it. So animal friendship and speak with animals gets mentioned in the same breath because one is fairly contingent upon the other. With animal friendship you're getting 24 hours of being able to charm the animal of your choice. This means as long as you or anyone else doesn't harm it, the creature won't actively attack you and you have advantage on social interactions with the thing as well. But in order to have any kind of social interaction, you'll need to be able to speak to it, and hence you need to speak with animals as well. But quite fortunately, this spell is a ritual. So cast Animal Friendship, you've got 24 hours of having this thing charmed. You can then just take another 10 minutes to ritual cast Speak with Animals, and then potentially you can ask it for a favour, get some directions from it. You know, whatever you might need. If you make a very good social role, you could potentially have the thing accompany you for the entire 24 hours. So it's very much like Charm Person, only you get a little bit more out of it. Unlike Charm Person, however, a beast under the Animal Friendship spell doesn't automatically consider you to be a friendly acquaintance, so you're going to have to actually do some convincing of it. The thing is essentially neutral towards you until you convince it otherwise, hence, again, why you need to have Speak with Animals as well. I don't think BARKSKIN is what it used to be. Essentially, you're not going to get much out of this. You're going to have your armor on, you're going to have your dexterity bonus, you might have a shield, you'll probably get to the same equivalent AC anyway without the need for concentration. Spike growth has the potential to destroy an encounter, a 20-foot radius of camouflage spikes, and all they're getting is a wisdom perception check to know that it's hazardous. If something charges towards you, they have to essentially move through 40 feet of spiky hazardous terrain. Any creature that can't see the area at the time the spell is cast must make a wisdom perception check against your spell save DC to recognise the terrain as hazardous before entering it. So essentially you want to cast it when someone's not looking and then goad them into it to take extra damage. The spell also makes for some difficult terrain as well, and you know how effective difficult terrain can be. Don't underestimate plant growth, it's a really good spell. Sapping 4 feet of creatures' movement for every 1 foot they actually move. The best part is this spell doesn't even make difficult terrain, so you can cast this around a creature that's already in difficult terrain and bring its movement speed down so low there's no way it's getting to you. The additional effect of being able to increase harvest is good as well, so it's well worth considering if you have one of those more long drawn out campaigns. Say you need to harvest throughout the winter because battle season is coming, that kind of thing. The Nature Cleric gets Wind Wall. This is one of my favourite spells. This thing does damage, it keeps out small creatures, it keeps away flyers, it keeps away ranged attacks like arrows and bolts, it also keeps out gases, fogs, all those kind of things. This is such a versatile spell. You want to be using it as often as you can. Seriously, check it out, have a good read through it. Seriously, this spell covers so much. If you realise its potential, you will be using it again and again and again. So Dominate Beast is one of those things that's either going to be great for low level things, which you're going to be way past that point already, or it's going to be good for the mid-level things like dinosaurs and stuff. So when your DM goes, "Rah, here we go, dinosaurs," you can go, yeah, Dominate Beast. Just enjoy the look on their face as they realise that their big encounter has suddenly been turned into your next mode of transport. Right, I'm going to ride my dinosaur in this direction. That's the benefit of having Dominate Beast and other similar spells that are really esoteric always memorised. No one needs those spells. Until they need them. Grasping Vine I find to be a bit meh. At least it's a bonus action to cast, so you can pull off one really quickly. But the capacity to just grab something and hold on to that one thing, you're probably just better off with the massive amounts of difficult terrain from spike growth or the massive movement restrictions from plant growth. Insect Plague does enough damage per turn, but for a 5th level spell that's essentially immobile, I'm not really sure if I'd want to use it that much. I guess it's okay considering they take damage when they enter and at the end of their turn, so they're going to take quite a bit of extra hit points worth. But still, I think you could have more fun with other things. Tree Stride is just too situational for me. It's okay in certain respects, but it relies on you essentially having a forest nearby, and it only works on yourself, and it has to be within 500 meters. So you might as well just be using dimension doors or teleports or something. Acolyte of Nature gives you access to the Druid cantrip of your choice, so Thorn Whip or Chalet represent good choices. You'll also get your choice of either Animal Handling, Nature or Survival skills. You get Heavy Armor Proficiency as well for free, which is the reason I said BARKSKIN you'll probably never use, because you get a minimum of 14 AC with Heavy Armor, and you get to use a shield as well at the same time, so you're going to have 16 anyway. Add into that fact you've got things like Enchanted Armors, you've got spells like Shield of Faith, and yeah, you're going to be well defended as a Nature Cleric. So your Channel Divinity gives you the Charm ability when it comes to animals and plants. This isn't a bad thing, however it does only last for a minute, whereas your spell will last for 24 hours. But there are pros and cons, considering your spell doesn't affect plants, but your Channel Divinity does. However, it only lasts for a minute, but you do get to target everything within the radius. So it doesn't necessarily overwrite your spells, but it is more of a specific situation to use the spell, whereas the Channel Divinity can be more useful in a broader encounter. Also, the benefit of this Channel Divinity is that the creatures are friendly towards you and any other creatures you designate, making things very, very easy when it comes to encounters with beasts and plant creatures. Dampen Elements has to be one of my god picks. You can use your reaction to give yourself or a friendly creature within 30 feet resistance to acid, cold, fire, thunder or lightning. This defense is a great reason to go Nature Cleric, and it should definitely be used as often as you can. As long as you've got a reaction free, you're going to have some resistance to energy damage. Nature Domain Clerics have access to Divine Strike just like a lot of other clerics do. However, most of them only give you one energy type, whereas the Nature Cleric actually gives you fire, ice and lightning. I can imagine this being really useful if you wanted to go for a kind of cleric fighter multiclass who really specializes in energy weapon attacks. I think it would be a lot of fun. So Master of Nature links into your Channel Divinity and allows you to give commands to a whole horde of creatures that are charmed by you, which is great if you are in an area where there are lots of beasts, but by the time you hit level 17, you're going to be off going in other planes, dealing with things like devils, celestials, all that kind of stuff. You're going to be doing some really high level stuff. So I can't see you using it all that often. But it is a nice thematic ability, and I do like the way it works. It's just a pity that you're not going to be able to make as much use of it as I would like. In summary, Nature Cleric is a bit of a mixed bag. You've got a variety of spells, some are amazing, some not quite so much. Really great multi-class potential, especially with things like Heavy Armor Proficiency, the Dampen Elements and the Divine Strike being really good if you want to go as a melee fighter style. And just some really interesting abilities that revolve around a specific theme. I think Nature Clerics have the potential to do really, really well. I just think perhaps that they're being overlooked in favour of things like Life and Tempest and War domains. It's a specialist domain for sure, but there's the opportunity there for a lot of versatility if you know what you're looking for. I'm just going to get it out there. Tempest domain with Storm Sorcery, absolutely broken. Now we've established that, we can move on to the domain itself. Fog Cloud is a great utility and defensive tool that grows exponentially with high level spell slots. Fog Cloud makes things heavily obscured, which blocks out vision entirely, so creatures effectively suffer from the blindness condition, and blind creatures have disadvantage on attack rolls. This is an amazing spell for defense and for sneaking about, especially when you cast it in high level slots and you have huge blankets of fog covering enormous areas. Creatures won't even know where to target you, let alone be able to hit you. Thunderwave's damage is fair, but the real prize is the pushback. Creatures get knocked back 10 feet if they fail their save, and unattended objects that are completely within the area automatically get pushed back 10 feet. This is regardless of size, regardless of weight, providing of course it fits within the whole area, you can push it back 10 feet. I actually went over this when I did my video on pacifist sorcerers. Look for the utility in these spells, and Thunderwave is a really, really good one if you know what you're looking for. Gust of Wind is another one of my favourite spells. It's got pushback, it reduces enemy movement speed, it's good for dispersing gases and fogs, so if you've got another sneaky Tempest Cleric who's decided to Fog Cloud you, at least you've got a counter to that. And it lasts for a concentration duration. You can continue to move it around with bonus actions while still doing other things. Really great versatile spell. Everything from just keeping things away to defensive utility to getting rid of other creatures. Shatter does respectable damage, but it also has the added benefit of being able to do damage to unattended objects as well. making it a very useful and versatile spell for getting through to areas like through doors that you don't have the key to, or just for destroying weapons that you've disarmed from someone. Cool Lightning I find to be a bit so-so. You need enough room to accommodate the cloud when you cast this spell so that you can bring lightning bolts down from it. It does respectable damage, and it does it in an area as well, but you need to use your action every turn in order to summon a lightning bolt, so you might as well just be using cantrips and other similar things if you want to deal lightning damage every turn. If I'm going to have a spell that's in effect for multiple rounds, I would usually prefer it to be either a DOT or to have some kind of mechanical effect on the environment which allows me to control the battlefield better. Sleet Storm is an absolutely amazing spell with a massive radius of effect. It has difficult terrain, it can douse flames, it can make creatures fall prone, it can force concentration checks, it heavily obscures, meaning no sight and disadvantage on attack rolls. This thing is so good, and it lasts for up to a minute of concentration as well. This is one of the best spells you'll ever find in 3rd level. Control Water has some really great effects: flooding, parting water, redirecting the flow, doing whirlpools and stuff. This thing is really versatile. It is a little bit situational, but because it's one of your domain spells, you always have it, so it's just there when you need it. Ice Storm isn't a bad fire and forget spell. It's got a reasonable radius, it's good for dealing with trash mobs, a couple of different damage types, so it's only going to be partially resisted. However, considering your ability to maximize your lightning damage, chances are you're just going to want to concentrate on that. Destructive Wave's another good fire and forget. It just radiates out from you 30 feet in all directions. You can select the creatures you want to hit. It's got multiple damage types, so it's only going to be partially resisted, and the thunder element can be maximized using your channel divinity. As well as the capacity to knock a creature prone, this is a very good 2-for-1 that you're getting. And finally, the Tempest Cleric gets Insect Plague. Why? It just seems so out of place. Still, I've already gone over this once, so I don't see the point in doing it again. You get martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor proficiency for free with the Storm Cleric, which means you can get hold of some really good weapons like polearms, for example, so they're good for defensives, and of course you have your heavy armor proficiency for defense as well, so you've got a really good start there. Wrath of the Storm is really only useful in low levels when you're going to be able to do some retributive damage to something that hits you, but most of the time as you progress through your levels, you're going to find much more important uses for your reaction anyway. The damage it deals is okay. It's basically a discount Hellish Rebuke, but at the same time you only get a limited number of uses of this per day, so you're not going to be using it very much at all. Your channel divinity is Destructive Wrath, which means maximize damage for the lightning or thunder spell of your choice, so just pick your most powerful one and go to town on the enemies. At level 6, Thunderbolt Strike has that pushback effect of 10 feet with no save. This works against any creature of large size or smaller, and it's just so good because you can use it with just basic spells like cantrips. Shocking Grasp deals some significant damage. You then get to push it back into, say, a static object or a spell effect, maybe your Insect Plague. Look, we found a use for it after all. Combine this with Polar Master and Warcaster and you got some really good effects there. If something comes into range of, say, your Quarterstaff, you get an attack of opportunity, which you can use Warcaster then to swap out for a spell, use another Shocking Grasp, deal damage, push them back into the static environment or spell that you've got going, just rinse and repeat. Definitely worth trying to pick up Shocking Grasp if you can get it. If you're an elf, you can get it for free. If you are a multi-class sorcerer or something, you can get it that way. But if you're not any of those things, at least you can use a feat in order to have magic initiate or something. The various strike moves we've been over before: Tempest Cleric gets lightning, D8 damage at level 8, 2d8 damage at level 14. At level 17 you get Stormborn, which means you can fly as long as you're not underground or indoors. It's okay, I like the ability to fly because it does give you more tactical opportunities, but at level 17 it really is a little bit lackluster. I think by the time you get to level 17 you should have some really impressive things on the go. But still, a useful ability nonetheless. Tempest Cleric has some really good potential, whether you want to go just straight Cleric or perhaps multi-class into something. Sorcerer is a very good choice because you get access to spells like Lightning Bolt and the like. However, you do really want to try to find a good way of getting hold of Shocking Grasp. It is a very good cantrip, but it's just not available to the Tempest Cleric naturally. So like I say, if you're an elf, or if you get Magic Initiate, or you multi-classing, then it's definitely a good pick, because it works really nicely with some of your abilities. As a standalone domain, however, this one has some of the best spells in it. You've got Fog Cloud, you've got Sleet Storm, you've got Gust of Wind. These are some of my favourite controlling spells and some of the best utilities you can get. I'm really into the Trickery domain. I think sometimes just getting through an encounter with Trickery can be so much more fun than just going out with sword and spell all the time. So Charm Person does exactly what it says on the tin, as does Disguise Self, so does Pass Without Trace, and Dispel Magic, oddly enough, dispels magic. So none of these spells really need explaining, but they're really good and really versatile ones. I don't really need to go into depth with them, but just to understand that some of them are very, very useful, especially things like Charm Person, Disguise Self. You're going to be using these a lot. Pass Without Trace is okay, it's not an amazing one, but it does have its uses, and Dispel Magic is going to be your bread and butter when it comes to dealing with enemy spellcasters. Mirror Image remains one of your best defenses against physical attacks. I would cast it as often as possible. Considering it doesn't have any concentration on it, you're going to get a lot of use out of this spell. Blink is another great spell that doesn't require any concentration, but it allows you to step onto the ethereal plane, making it somewhat of utility as well. You stay on the material when it's your turn, take your action, and then you blink onto the ethereal plane. That way, creatures don't really get much of a chance to retaliate against you, but also because you're in the ethereal, there's the potential to circumvent certain obstacles as well. Dimension Door I don't find to be amazing. It's okay if you're on solo mission and you need that quick escape, but considering you can't take the rest of your party with you, I probably wouldn't use it that much. It is really for those situations when you're on your own, and it's not always a good idea to be splitting the party. Still, because you always have it, it's a good get out of jail free card when you need it. Polymorph's a good choice because it allows you defense, attack, utility. It's a good substitute for something like Fly. It's also a good substitute for not needing spells like water breathing, but pretty much only if you're going solo. It's very good for dealing with other creatures as well. You can turn something into a harmless beast or a harmless animal, so it's not going to be much of a threat to you. It's a very versatile spell, just remember it has a concentration duration on it as well. Dominate Person used to be the king of mind control, but unfortunately now it's just a paper tiger. You have to give general commands. When you do want it to do something really specific, you have to then use your own action to do so. Every time a creature takes damage that's under the Dominate Person spell, it gets a new saving throw, and it only lasts for a minute as well. This duration does increase the higher up spell slots you use, but unfortunately it's just not as a reliable spell as it used to be. Regardless of its drawbacks, however, Dominate Person is still a great spell to try to make work. Just having a couple of rounds where you don't have to be an adversary with someone, whether that be socially or physically, is going to be all that more beneficial to you. Just when it seems like all is lost when it comes to Dominate Person, you get a spell like Modify Memory, which essentially allows a creature to become your best friend because they genuinely believe that that is what happened. The sooner you can actually cast this, the better, because it means lower level spell slot usage. However, if you do have to cast it with, say, something like an 8th or 9th level spell, you're looking at some very long durations, or possibly even any time in the creature's lifetime, to modify a memory. Unfortunately, there are certain memories that just won't take. You have to read the spell and really understand it, and it's a bit too complicated for me to go into here. But understand that if you have at least a fairly plausible memory, the creature is going to try to interpret that in the most positive way that it can. If you manage to capture something, for example, immediately after a fight, you could probably use Modify Memory to make it believe that you rescued it from the attackers and make it forget that it was actually one of the attackers in the first place. Something like that might be a simple example off the top of my head, and it's a good way to gain yourself an extra ally and possibly more information than you would normally have available to you. Blessing of the Trickster is a really great start to this domain because it allows you to give your heavily armoured fighters advantage on their stealth rolls. At the very least, you're going to be able to knock off some of the disadvantage that they're going to get from wearing heavy armour. This will allow your party to sneak around that much more easily. Considering the fact you only have to do this as an action and it lasts for up to an hour, you can put this on everyone in your party, even if you can't have it on yourself. Invoke Duplicity is an amazing channel divinity, considering the fact that the spells emanate from that illusion rather than from you. You get lots of tactical advantage. Not only that, it's great for mixing up creatures, not knowing where you are, it's great for being able to get flanking advantage, and it's also really useful for being able to target creatures when you don't have a direct line of effect. Projecting an image of yourself allowing you to perform indirect spellcasting is very, very strong. You can use all your best touch attacks at range because you've got a distance between yourself and your image which you can put behind something. You can use it for getting around corners, you can use it for indirect line of sight if you have another form of visual aid. So there are many different uses for it, and one that you really want to experiment with a lot. Cloak of Shadows gives you 1 round of invisibility. I can't imagine you would use this an awful lot. If you do need to use it, it's probably only in a pinch when things get really desperate. In many cases it might be worth considering going into a few levels of another class, maybe Warlock or Sorcerer, if you would like to have invisibility in your list of spells. Other than that, I can't see you using this instead of Invoke Duplicity. If you do make use of your Divine Strike, this is probably a good one, because Poison is one of those less resisted energy types, whereas other things like Cold, Fire, Lightning, they're more commonly resisted. At least with this one, it's not going to be something that creatures are always prepared for. If having 1 illusionary duplicate that you can cast your spells out of is good, then having 4 is absolutely amazing. If any go down, at least you've got spares, but it basically works like a discount mirror image as well. While this is going, no one can really tell the difference between you and your illusions, so at least you've got plenty of options to avoid being attacked. Add to that the ability to move all your illusions around at once, and you can dive in amongst them and create maximum confusion. There's a lot going on in the Trickery domain. You're getting access to some of the most versatile spells that would normally only be available to characters like wizards, warlocks or sorcerers. As if having all these great spells wasn't enough, Blessing of the Trickster allows you to solve that age-old problem of the characters within the party who are usually very bad at stealth. Honestly, not enough people are playing the Trickery domain, and that's a real shame, because there's enough utility in there to put you on par with the savviest of arcane spellcasters. A disciple dedicated to war is often a terrifying concept, but the War Domain Cleric is very popular, and to be honest, it's a very good domain as well. I see it used a lot, but I wonder how many people are using it to its fullest potential. War has some pretty straightforward spells, and they're not particularly complicated, but then again, at the same time, you don't have to be complicated to be effective. Spells like Magic Weapon and Shield of Faith are really good because you only need a bonus action to cast them, allowing you to make full advantage of their benefits while still doing other things as well. Spells like STONESKIN do require a little bit more investment, but the defenses offered by it are just amazing. There isn't really much that I can say about these spells, but just remember that they are some of the best ones that you can have for when it comes to just straight up combat. People should really think more of Divine Favor. Because it's a spell that affects you, you can use it with any kind of weapon at any time. So you can use it with bows, with thrown weapons, with melee weapons, with unarmed strikes, even with improvised weapons as well, which gives you a lot more tactical versatility, as well as the fact that you're going to be able to just get lots and lots of extra damage in those early levels. Divine Favor should really be considered a useful spell, especially when you can even cast it as a bonus action as well. Spiritual Weapon is a great use of your bonus action every round. Even at low level, it's good for dealing out extra hits, but when you're using some higher level spell slots, it can really shred enemies. You get lots of attacks with this thing because you get a minute of duration and you don't have any concentration either. This thing is great to have on all the time, and it's definitely worth casting in higher level spell slots as well. A really good spell that scales really well and doesn't use up your concentration either. This is one of the best, make sure you use it. Crusader's Mantle is essentially Divine Favor in a radius. However, they have managed to sneak in an extra action to cast this thing, so you're going to have to use up your turn in order to give the bonus to everyone around you. This spell is only as useful as much as you have physical attackers who can take advantage of it. If you've got rangers or monks with things like 2-weapon fighting or a flurry of blows, then this spell becomes pretty useful, but for the usual party composition of fighter, rogue, wizard, cleric, essentially you're not going to get as much out of it. Spirit Guardians deals really good damage round after round, and it only affects the creatures you want to. It even slows your enemies, allowing the rest of your party to catch up and pound them into submission. I think if a melee fighter could pick any kind of spell to have all the time, it would probably be Freedom of Movement. Fighters don't want to be entangled, fighters don't want to be grappled. This is a great spell for ignoring both magical and natural snares and controlling effects. Never could get on with Flame Strike. In my opinion, it just doesn't deal enough damage, and the radius isn't very big either. If you want to be just blowing up trash mobs, leave it to your sorcerer. And finally, the War Domain gets Hold Monster. Far too good a spell. Paralysis is a devastating condition that means automatic critical hits and advantage on attack rolls, so make sure you cast this as often as you can, and you really want it to stick, so you need a nice high wisdom. This complements really nicely with your War Priest ability that allows you additional attacks as bonus actions. Combine the two and have the rest of your party attacking as well, and you'll bring down the target of your choice in seconds. Martial weapon proficiency and heavy armor proficiency is great if you're only going with single class. These are proficiencies that will be overwritten if you're going multi-class, but that's not really a big problem. You don't get a lot of extra attacks with War Priest, so you really want to take advantage of those conditions like paralysis. So if something's under the compulsion of a whole monster or a whole person spell, this is the best time to use it. If you're suspecting that a creature is on its last legs and it needs one more strike to bring it down, again, it's a great use of one of your bonus actions. A plus 10 bonus on your attack roll isn't something you're actually going to need when you're coming up against creatures that are of equivalent level, but if you do come up across something that's really big and really well defended, or if you're having to suffer with disadvantage on your attack rolls, these are the best times to use your guided strike. War God's Blessing is exactly the same as the previous one, except for the fact you need to use your reaction in order to give it to somebody else. Again, the same situations apply. Not too bad if you need to make sure that your rogue gets a guaranteed sneak attack on someone, but other than that, it's just not an amazing channel divinity. Your Divine Strike is the same type as whatever weapon you're using. This is both a blessing and a curse, because if creatures are resistant to your weapon, then they're going to be resistant to your Divine Strike damage as well. But on the other hand, if they are vulnerable to it in any way, the damage will just improve. Avatar of Battle. Not bad, resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, slashing, as long as it's non-magical. However, at level 17, a lot of creatures are going to be using magical weapons. Really good against certain monsters that rely on natural attacks, but other than that, it's just not amazing. The good thing about it is that it's always on, so if you do happen to get caught off guard, at least you've got potentially some resistance, and the fact that it doesn't require any spell slot expenditure or the use of any channel divinity just makes it a useful thing to have on you all the time. War doesn't get amazing abilities, unfortunately, but some of the spells that it does get access to can make up for it. War is very good for multi-classing into because of the bonuses you get for proficiencies and the extra attacks you get from War Priest, but as you gain in levels, you tend not to get as much benefit by going further along the track. You might want to jump out of this early and just take advantage of the cool abilities that you have front-loaded into it. Thanks guys for watching part 2 of the Cleric analysis. Hopefully you guys got something out of it. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like, leave a comment. If you're not already subscribed, why not consider doing so? And there will be more to come next time when we do part 3 and our unconventional Cleric builds as well. Also, for those of you who are looking for an interesting adventure builder, our Kickstarter is still running until the 30th of July. So if you want to check that out and potentially have hundreds and thousands of different combinations for new adventures, then I'll leave a link in the description below. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you guys next time at the gaming table.